Welcome to Soccer Radio and Spirit Weavers. Join us as Jody Morrison shares with us her knowledge, abilities, teaching us how it's done, right here on Soccer Radio. Brought to you by spiritualistonline.com.
Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is your host, Jody Morrison, and you are listening on Soccer Radio to Spirit Weavers. I'd like to welcome you all to this edition of Spirit Weavers. Whether you're tuning in on Soccer Radio, on TuneIn, or on any other platform, we're so glad that you're with us today. As you know, Spirit Weavers is dedicated to introducing you all to fascinating people who are living their spirituality. It's not something that they do as their work or something they do once a week. It's an integral part of who they are. And we are incredibly fortunate tonight to have a really wonderful woman with us. And her name is Jenny Johnston. She is originally from, or in fact, she still is from Australia, the Melbourne area, although she does travel a lot. Jenny, say hi and welcome.
Hi, it's great to be here, and it's my afternoon and your evening. We're pre-recording this, and we've got somebody from the UK as well, and it's like we're all across the world, all in the now, and it's great.
Isn't that an amazing thing that,
yes.
that technology allows somebody in Australia, somebody in the UK, somebody in the US to come together and to share this time? And which reminds me, I'd like to say a thank you to Colin, our producer, because it's 7 a.m. for him. So this is an act of love, and we all really appreciate it. Jenny, I wanted to start off by asking you, most people have experiences in their early lives which tell them that there's something more going on than the average folk talk about. But that didn't, I read your wonderful book. This is a shameless plug for Jenny's book called Tapping into Past Lives. That wasn't really like that for you, was it?
Well, I was brought up in a church family, so it was Methodist church and then Uniting Church here in Australia, and I was even a Sunday school teacher in my early teens, and I basically looked into spirituality when my mother died suddenly, and the year after that, my husband took off with somebody and left me with 3 young kids, and it was during that time that I was doing spiritual development groups, psychic development groups, meditation groups, reading anything that I could get my hands on to do with near-death experiences and, what was happening on the other side. I had messages that came through from mediums from my mother. And I really looked into past life regression. In fact, I met somebody a few months after my marriage broke up, and I knew we'd been together before, and there was this amazing electricity, and we both did past life regressions together, and I found that he was my husband in my past life in America, where I was pregnant and he went off to the Civil War, but promised that he'd come back, and of course he died. And so because of that soul promise, he had to come back and, say hi in this lifetime, which he did. And after we did the past life regressions and I got that message, he left. And we did catch up 8 years later, and that was more of a conclusion and a completion to that soul promise. It was just a holiday catch up. And that was when I realized that there's so much more to our lives than just this one lifetime, and that other lifetimes still influence you now. So I started taking other people into past lives, and then I realized I wanted to train in that. So I became a hypnotherapist and then a past life regression hypnotherapist. And while I was doing my hypnotherapy, I learned about EFT or tapping.
Uh-huh.
And what I eventually did was combined all my spiritual knowledge with EFT and with past life regression and created quantum EFT for the soul, where we also don't just go into past lives to heal traumas and beliefs that are still affecting us now, but once we release those, we go and find the gold. So I call that mining the Akash, where we go back and we look at lifetimes that we were leaders, where we did have lifetimes of joy and abundance and love, where we were the writer, where we were, whatever we want to go and claim and then bring back and activate for us now and experience that.
When I saw the title of your book, I didn't realize that it was tapping. I thought it
Yes.
was tapping into, and the funniest thing happened for me. For years, I didn't put much credence into tapping. It seemed really kind of odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a chiropractor friend, and he would often call me in, and the two of us would work together on people who had physical issues where there was, we all know that, or most of us know that physical issues manifest for reasons other than, gee, I caught this, whatever. And
Yes.
I discovered that he never named it as tapping, but I realized that it was tapping and that he'd used that with me and it was very effective. And so when I saw your book and the title and I started to read it, I was entranced because I had kind of cleared that hurdle in me, and I was so open to reading about the work that you've done. There's a difference though between EFT and quantum EFT, right?
Yes. What we do with quantum EFT is that we're really working on a soul level and we're working with the multidimensional layers of our DNA. So before, when scientists would speak about the the 3% of our DNA that was protein encoded, which was all the genomes, all the genes, they used to call the rest of the DNA junk DNA. However, they now know and realize that the rest of the DNA is actually instructional to the 3% of the DNA. And in that instructional DNA, it's actually quantum DNA. So it has quantum layers. That's why it's not physical. It's an instruction. So all of these quantum layers or multidimensional layers of our DNA have instructions that come from all of our lifetimes. And so you'll find in my new book, Your Past Life Inheritance, tapping into the wisdom within to create your future now. In that book, I do have some more examples of people who have got physical things happening in this lifetime that are coming from other lifetimes. So, for example, there was a lady who had headaches and migraines all her life. And then she turned a certain age and she went from being in a profession, psychology actually, and then she just wanted to be in business. And so all of a sudden she dropped psychology and went into business, and the headaches got worse. And when we did the past life regression, it went back to a past life where she was a male in London, a businessman who absolutely loved and thrived on business. And on the way to a business meeting, had a car accident and died from massive head injuries.
Oh, wow.
Now, when I asked what age they were when they died, she said, same age as I am now. And so that's why when she turned that age, it triggered the headaches even more, and it triggered this desire to be in business. So once we released that desire that was all coming from a past life, she now is doing both. She's, dabbling in business, but more for fun and enjoyment and as a hobby. And she's gone back to EFT, quantum EFT, psychology, and enjoying both. But it's a matter of choice now. Before, she was compelled to do it, and
Yeah.
the headaches have now released a lot.
How
So
did you how did you stumble across or find or was led to
yes.
EFT?
Well, lots of synchronicities, of course, because that's what always occurs in life. When
Yeah.
I actually had a severe back injury and I had to have spinal surgery. I was an occupational therapist and lifting lots of furniture, doing home visits. And I hurt my back. I went to a chiropractor who actually um, broke off the prolapse, and it created foot drop.
Oh.
And so I had no movement in my left foot. So I had to have emergency spinal surgery to have that taken out. And then I was laying flat on my back for at least 3 weeks, and I had several months off work. And while I was on my back, my Reiki master came to visit, and she said, "What have you been doing while you've been laying here all this time?" And I said, I've been rereading Many Lives, Many Masters, and the books
Uh-huh.
about past life regression. And so she said, "Oh, my sister's just completed a course in hypnotherapy." And so all of a sudden, I was led to this course in hypnotherapy. While I was doing that hypnotherapy, a student also introduced me to EFT. And I was also synchronistically led to EFT, I mean, to Cryon. Sorry,
I
there's
was
just
just
a bit
gonna
of noise.
yeah, I was gonna ask you about Cryon. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, when I was at work as an occupational therapist, we had a locum, or somebody that just filled in for 2 weeks. And
Uh-huh.
because I was talking about spiritual things, she gave me 2 books, Cryon Book 1 and Cryon Book 2.
Uh-huh.
And I never saw her again, but I became a fan of the Cryon channelings. And it was basically in the Cryon channelings that Cryon talks about mining the Akash, and that we have so much wisdom in our body, in the wisdom of innate, which kinesiologists tap into when
Yes.
they
Yes.
use muscle testing.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so many of us don't use the wisdom of our innate. And so I went to Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon, and I said, well, you talk about mining the Akash and bringing that information from the wisdom of innate and then activating it in our current DNA and our current physiology. I said, I see EFT to be able to do that through the meridian system, through the energy system, through because when we're tapping, our brain waves go into the subconscious range. So through a subconsciousness, as well as having consciousness present. And he said, yeah, fantastic, write the book, do the workshops. And so off I went and did both.
That's amazing. You
Mm,
talk a lot about finding in the second half of tapping into past lives. You talk about finding your joy, finding what your
mm,
soul purpose is, and it seems to me that this is really your sole purpose is to have put these together and to
mm.
offer them out to the
Yes,
world.
yes, I believe I'm the catalyst for that. So that I'm a catalyst for people who want to find themselves, and particularly women who have a gift, who have something that they want to bring out of themselves to the world, but they keep themselves small because they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
They're they've got something in their DNA or their past lives that says, careful, last time you spoke the truth, last time you came out and did that, you were killed for that, you were persecuted for that, you were burnt at the stake for that, you were
Mm-hmm.
sent out of the tribe, whatever. And so many old souls who have lifetimes like that have this fear of stepping out and bringing their gift out to the world, and so they keep themselves small. And so it feels like it's my purpose to help those people to come out of the closet, the spiritual closet, so to speak, and promote themselves and bring their gift out to others.
Do you work with mediumship or with guides?
I always work with guides and higher self. So that's one of the things that we do when we're tapping is when we're tapping into a certain pattern, we always address guides and higher self. I ask my guides and higher self, where does this pattern come from? So I can process and release it all the way back to its origin, wherever it began in this life and every life. And often while we're tapping, we will get flashes, or the person will get flashes, and they'll say, oh, I just saw myself being burned, or I just saw this, or and some will get more information than others. But the more that we practice it, the more that the guides are able to download something for them to get. And some people don't. They don't get any of that information, but they get a sense of relief that something has shifted because we have instructed and we say out loud, I am a being of light with full free choice. And it's my choice now. I instruct my DNA to process and release this all the way back to its origin through all of my lifetimes.
So people don't have to go through the trauma of each individual lifetime. You can sort of do it
yes.
all at once.
Yeah, in a clean sweep, but it's very specific to something. Like I just had a client this afternoon who was, we worked on abandonment, and there was a lot of abandonment and fear of abandonment in this lifetime. So we went through the specific memories in this lifetime that are still triggering that fight or flight stress response. And then once we'd cleared those specific memories that she could remember, we then instructed the DNA to release it all the way back through all the lifetimes.
I find that absolutely fascinating. You know, many years ago, I trained in humanistic psychology, and one of the beliefs that I held very strongly was that there was absolutely no reason why somebody would have to relive, many lifetimes of,
Yes.
and even in this lifetime, many experiences that were similar. And it seemed to me that if I could tap into and that was an unintentional pun, if I could tap into a core belief, that the healing of that core belief would cleanse or heal all the way back. And that seemed to work out. And what you're saying sounds really similar to me.
Yeah, and it's about not only having the intention is very, very powerful, but also stating it out loud for yourselves to hear that. So what we're doing with quantum EFT is we're engaging consciousness as well as subconsciousness, as well as guides and higher self, as well as our energy system. And we're speaking out loud and telling our DNA what we want it to do.
How is, this may be sound like a rather naive question, but I'm curious as to what your answer would be. How does neurolinguistic programming, is that similar in any way to the work you do?
Yeah, I can use NLP within quantum EFT. So one of the main things that NLP looks at too is how your memory is processed. And of course, we look at all the different aspects of what you saw, what you heard, all the different senses of how that was then processed into your brain through that memory. For example, seeing a childhood memory where somebody was injured and there was blood everywhere or something like that, then you'll be instructing your eyes to release and let go of all the fear, all of the emotions, all the trauma that your eyes took on when you saw all of that blood.
Yeah.
And all the thoughts of, my mother's going to die now, or whatever was coming up, whatever you saw. The fear of abandonment, the fear of this and that, whatever comes up, but also that fight or flight response or that freeze response. So we need to tap that out of the body and release it and let it go before we can even look at spiritual soul agreements. But once that's physically gone and they're in a biological state of relaxation, we can then start looking at, well, what was the soul agreement I had with my mother? And why did I have this fear of abandonment? And what you can then look at is, well, we did have a soul agreement, and it's because I wanted to step through this lesson of abandonment, and that I've obviously had it for many lifetimes because I wouldn't have it again now if it was already dealt with.
Right. If it had already not been an issue, then there'd be no reason
Yes.
for it to come up.
Yes.
When you first,
Mhm.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a soul agreement and a soul lesson because we have had lifetimes of it, and it hasn't been processed and released. It hasn't been a lesson that's been stepped through, and that's why we've created it again in this lifetime.
You know, I had a client years ago
Mhm.
who talked so softly that you
Mhm.
could barely hear her. And
Yep.
when she would teach things online, she wouldn't use her cam and mic. She would type everything. And
Mm.
um, and I found that really interesting. And um, I was doing a reading with her, and she was traveling in a covered wagon across the U.S. and as a
Right.
pioneer woman. And her husband was very dominating, and she basically wasn't allowed to talk. And
Mm.
then a flash came for her, of a lifetime when she was on the Crusades and took an arrow in the throat.
Yes.
And it became really clear to me. It's just, again, synchronicity, and I'm going to ask you about that in a moment.
Mhm.
It became really clear to me that the soul lesson was in regaining her voice.
Yes.
And as we didn't do anything anywhere near as deep and as wonderful as what you do, and yet just that knowledge seemed to
Mhm.
really make a difference. And within weeks, she was talking audibly. She was willing to come on cam, and I was totally blown away by the power of that.
Yeah. And sometimes knowledge alone of what's gone on in a past life is enough for somebody with a great conscious intention to step through that, for them to
Hmm.
step through that. However, often we need that energetic processing as well, especially if there's still a lot of trauma associated with it. So, for example, in my latest book, there was a lady who did one of my workshops in Santa Ana, and then in 2015, and then 2016, she did one in Fort Lauderdale. Then she did my Transform Your Life program. So she's done a lot of work. But in the very first one, um, there was she had all these amazing gifts, but was afraid to even get in front of a camera. Now she's doing weekly live posts on Facebook, and she's got her own TV.
Wow.
She's a best-selling author of a book. Um, yeah, she's doing amazing things right now. But the first session that we did, it was, and her story's in the book as well as her video, how they sewed her mouth shut because she was speaking her truth.
Oh
So
my goodness.
she had her mouth sewn shut. Then they burnt
Mm.
her at the stake, and then they buried her, thinking she was dead, but she was still alive. So she was
Oh
buried
my
alive,
God.
all for speaking her truth. So no wonder her DNA was screaming at her, "Don't speak your truth. Don't be seen. Keep it all to yourself." And
Oh
so
yeah.
that was a major um, lifetime that we had to step through. But there were many lifetimes that were similar. That were very traumatic, that we had to release in order for her to then find those lifetimes. And we did find many lifetimes where she was a leader, where she worked with herbs, where she worked with smells. She worked in a French perfumery at one stage, just all these amazing skills. She was also a belly dancer and a midwife. And in this life, she's a midwife and a belly dancer. And she works with essential oils and so she's combined all of that stuff that she knew and learned from other lifetimes, and she's very confident in using them in this lifetime now.
That's fabulous. It just makes, physics has told us for a long, long time that energy is never lost. It can be transformed, but it's never lost. And so this makes tremendous sense to me. The idea that we would, in our many different lifetimes, that the charge or the energy around certain themes, I guess you could call them, would follow us to be cleared, to be worked with. And then that energy is then released. That just, it's sort of ecological in that way.
Yeah, especially traumatic experiences, because the body remembers them in order to protect us, saying, don't do that again. Remember last time that happened. And it's all part of a protection system that is good and right for us until it doesn't serve us anymore. And that's why when we're tapping, we're actually thanking our body for remembering this and for protecting us. However, it no longer serves my highest good, and I choose to process and release it. And I instruct my body to process and release it. So, we're acknowledging it, we're accepting it, we're being grateful that the body has held on to it, but then we're instructing the body to release it now.
As a starting off as a therapist, a Gestalt therapist, but it's still a therapist, often found that to be true, that the lessons that people learned as they were growing up in this lifetime taught them how to cope with circumstances that were sometimes mundane but added up over time, and sometimes were very dramatic. But those patterns no longer, or those behaviors no longer served. And so at this lifetime level, helping people see that, what they used to do, not confronting, putting everybody ahead of themselves. I mean, the litany is almost endless. That got them through. And rather than looking at those patterns as being horrible things, looking at them instead as being gifts that we gave ourselves because they let us survive. It's just that we've grown to a point where that's no longer functional.
Yeah, that we don't need survival anymore. Yeah,
exactly. And that speaks to some of the changes that many people who call themselves as a group light workers are experiencing on the planet. Jenny, let's take a short break, and when we come back, I want to talk about some of those changes with you. So I'd like to thank first all the people who are listening in at SOC Radio, at TuneIn, and other platforms. I'm so glad you could be with us today and learn a little bit more, get to know Jenny and her work a little bit more. So we'll see you on the other side, and we will continue this conversation.
We are taking a break for messages from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. Jody White Wolf Morrison will be right back with more from Spirit Weavers. Spirit Talk with Julie. Spirits medium Julie Simpson and guests delve into the world of spirit, the faith and the way of life, renewing the movement that brought two worlds together and ancient spiritual beliefs to the forefront of society, proving once and for all there is nothing to fear in talking to spirit. Live in the SOC Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com, or simply listen in at tunein.com and search for SOC Radio. Join us on SOC Radio. Host your own online radio show. We welcome inquiries and ideas for your own show live right here on SOC Radio. Share your knowledge, thoughts and abilities. Bring your ideas to life with us here on SOC Radio and spiritualistonline.com. Or join any of our shows as a special guest, speaker or presenter. Check out the liveliest spiritual chat show, the Spiritualist Open Circle Panel Forum, a monthly discussion show, or the Circle of Mediums, a weekly show sharing spirit messages and teaching all aspects of mediumship and psychic abilities. Or join our Christina on the monthly astrology show. Contact us now at socradioshows@gmail.com. SOC Radio aims to provide a wide range of hosts, shows, views and opinions while endeavouring to maintain our three vital principles of openness, honesty and integrity, covering all aspects of spiritualism, mediumship, healing, personal and spiritual development for all faiths, religions and walks of life as a way of life. As part of our spiritualistonline.com, Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum, SOC Radio brings you the latest and honest news, views and names in the spiritual field. Check us out and tune in to SOC Radio on spiritualistonline.com. Join in the SOC Radio chat room on the website. Beyond the Veil with Terry Oz. Check it out first Monday, monthly, 2 p.m. UK time. Terry shares her experiences and love of spiritual communication with those from beyond the veil. Join us live in the SOC Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com or simply listen in at tunein.com and search for SOC Radio. Advertise with SOC Radio. 10, 15, 20 or 30-second jingles, adverts or promotions, all going out live on SOC Radio. Promote your services, churches, groups or events at the best rates online. Work with us on shows or promotion and you could get your jingles absolutely free. For this and more, contact Julie at socradioshows@gmail.com. Spirit Weavers with Jody White Wolf Morrison, a weekly 1-hour radio show, Thursdays 8 p.m. UK time, featuring those who are dedicated to living their spirituality and exploring how that is woven into their everyday lives through their work, practices and beliefs. Various SOC members from Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum sharing their abilities, knowledge and more. Dates and times will vary. Live in the SOC Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com or simply listen in at tunein.com and search for SOC Radio. SOC Radio welcomes you back to Spirit Weavers with Jody White Wolf Morrison. You have been listening to Jody.
Welcome back, everybody, to Spirit Weavers with your host, Jody White Wolf Morrison, and today's fascinating guest, Jenny Johnston. And Jenny has been sharing with us her passion, her life work, which is involving quantum EFT and mining the Akash. And she's been sharing with us some of her stories of how this happens and how this works. Jenny, you mentioned something earlier that I want to come back to. You were talking about synchronicity and how important that is. And I wonder if you would share a little about your perspectives on synchronicity.
Basically, if you have a strong intention to do something, then it's about looking for all the synchronistic signs. And if synchronicity has something happen, then follow that synchronicity. For example, I do a whole chapter in my book about synchronicity, and it was like when I went to see Lee Carroll, and wanting to see him when he was in Melbourne and sending an email off to the person who brings him out. And she said, oh, well, you and 100 other people want to have a personal meeting with him. And she said, send me an email and I'll send it to Lee. And so I sent an email saying what I wanted to talk about, and that, if it was appropriate and synchronistic, then it would occur. And 2 days later, I got an email back saying Cryon and Lee Carroll would like to invite you to dinner. And so I thought, oh, well, they must have picked about a dozen out of the 100 emails. And when I got there, it was just me and another girl. And so that's when I was able to have a really in-depth chat with Lee. And that's when he said, yes, go and do the work. You have my stamp of approval, basically. And
Wow.
then I went over to America to a Cryon event in Mount Shasta. And it was the first time I went over there sort of by myself to a Cryon event. And it was 2 weeks after I'd been over to the States to do a workshop. And it was when I got home that I had a dream that I was over in America at the Shasta Cryon event, and people were saying, oh, you've come such a long way. And I was saying, yeah, no, I was only here 2 weeks ago.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so
Yeah, I'm looking
yeah.
at flying to New Zealand. I can imagine how much travel time that was, because I know how long that trip is.
Yeah, and the money and expense. And so,
Yeah.
but when I had that dream, I thought, okay, well, looks like I'm going. And so I booked and went. And then synchronistically, I found out that somebody else was trying to get in there, and they said, no, sorry, the books are closed. They closed a month ago. And I'm going, well, how come I just got in? So, there was that. And then there was Dr. Amber Wolf, who was running the Discovery event with Cryon. She was offering personal sessions. And because I was getting there early to, adjust to the time zone, I asked if I could have a session with her early. So she squeezed me in synchronistically. And then I also asked if I could... if she knew of anyone I could get a lift back with, because the Shasta shuttle was about an hour and a half back to Reading Airport. And she said, oh, Lee needs somebody in the car with him. His eyesight's not so good to be able to look at the navigation system. Only he was going to Medford Airport. And so I said to Lee, if I can change my flights, can I be with you? And he said, sure, but I don't like your chances because there's a whole bunch of people all leaving at the same time and they're only small planes. And so synchronistically, the night before I had to travel, I found a flight that was the flight after the one Lee was on, but I had a 7-hour layover in San Francisco, so it didn't make any difference to me. So then I said to him the next morning, against all odds, Lee, I have a flight out of Medford, so can I come with you? And so then I got to spend an hour and a half with him in the car, personally talking about some of the things that had happened to me in Shasta, which is also in my book, and and also about him encouraging me even further. So I'd started running the workshops, and I think that was when he said, write the book. And so there was many synchronistic things I've had when I decided to inquire about selling my occupational therapy business. I rang somebody who I thought might be interested, and next thing she goes, oh my God, I can't believe you've rung me. I so want to buy your business. Can we do it within the next couple of months? And just like that, I no longer had an income, and I truly had to step into, it was like Spirit was just pushing me all the way. I had to fully quantum EFT and really get stuck into writing the book. I had no idea how to write a book. It was like so foreign to me, but I knew that Lee had said I had to. Many people had said I had to. And so it was like, okay, I have to write a book. So when I was staying with Dawson Church, who's the head of EFT Universe, he wrote The Genie in Your Genes, and he's also a writer and publisher. And I said, Dawson, how do I write a book? And he goes, you need a book coach. And I said, a book coach? I've never heard of a book coach. And then another trainer friend of mine said, when you get to Dawson's, give me a call. So I've rung her and I've gone, Dawson says I need a book coach. I've never heard of it. Do you know a book coach? She goes, yeah, I do. I know a really good book coach. Next thing you know, I'm called this book coach, and we're talking, and she used to live in Australia, in Melbourne, about 10 minutes from me, and she used to
Oh
barrack
my.
for the same football team, and she said, I'll only work with you, if you don't barrack for so-and-so, because I'm a Hawthorn supporter. And I've gone, oh my God, we're meant to work together.
Oh,
And
that's
next,
wonderful.
I'm working with her, and then 3 months later, I've got a best-selling book. It was just freaky, really.
I just think that's so cool. Some people, including me, often say that synchronicities are spirit's way of talking to us
Yes.
in ways that we can't miss. Would you
Mm-hmm.
agree? Would you agree with that?
Definitely, definitely. And I've been told there's 3 books, and the second book has just been done, and it's available now, but I have a special deal on September 2nd. So for anyone who buys the book on September 2nd anywhere in the world, they can fill in a little form that I have, which enables them to get a whole set of bonuses, which are other people's books, ebooks, webinars, a whole lots of different things. And they only get that if they buy the book on September 2nd.
Is that your
And
second book or your first book?
my second book.
Oh, good.
So yeah, my first book you can actually get tappingintopastlives.tv it gives you the first 3 chapters of my book for free. And you also get many videos, free videos from some of the videos from the book, and also from my 2015 and 2016 workshop tours of North America. Same
Since
with...
we're, go ahead, finish up.
Well, I have many, many free videos that I like to get out there for people to see what quantum EFT is all about. So I have a YouTube channel called EFT Australia, which is one word, and I have a quantum EFT playlist. So these are all videos taken from, some are from people's personal sessions that they've given permission to go on this, and mostly they're from workshops. And so I offer that up free to people so that they can have a look at what this work's all about. And then if they want to work with me personally or on an online course, they can do so. I now
Wonderful.
run live online courses, so that we've just had the second one, and it's been more just a better experience than I thought it could be. We use live Zoom sessions.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Once a week for 6 weeks, and we have a secret Facebook group, and it's just amazing the way that everyone practices with each other from all around the world, and they connect and have so much in common, which I've always found within the live workshops, the live weekend workshops. There's so many synchronicities and connections, soul connections, other lifetimes that they've been together, and it's happening again in the live online courses as well. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
Again, synchronicity at a level below our conscious awareness. That's just so cool.
yeah,
I took a 7-week course from Robert Morris on dreaming. And what struck me about what you were saying is my experience of how the written word, audio tapes that are downloadable, private or closed Facebook groups, going live on Facebook, the blending of all of those different types of media, I think is fascinating.
I agree, and it connects us so easily around the world. That's what I love. And to be able to run the workshop live with everyone once a week is just amazing. And just like we've got people in different time zones here, I've had people from North America, from Northern Ireland, from Australia, from Portugal, all over the place, all on the one call.
I think that is amazing. Jenny, would you share with us on air some of the ways that people who are finding this really interesting can connect with you and learn more?
Sure. Well, my website, quantumeft.com.au, so the AU is for Australia, has a Quantum EFT page that you can read all about it there. It has a Transform Your Life program page that you can look at. It has the workshops page, and the workshops page has all the online workshops as well.
Oh, cool.
As well as tapping into pastlives.tv. And you can make free 15-minute appointments with me from my websites. There's the free videos on YouTube, as I said, EFT Australia, one word. And then the other thing that is about my book launch, for if people want to get all the bonuses for my book launch, it's quantumeft.com.au, and then it's / your past life inheritance. So it's your past life inheritance, but they've all got a hyphen in between them. And
wow.
that gives the page that has all the different bonuses that people can get on September the 2nd. And they can also, if they leave a review on Amazon, they can get an additional gift from me by emailing me their review, and I'll send you a Mining the Akash past life regression recording for you to practice with in your own home.
Oh, that is wonderful. Just keeping all of that straight has got to keep you a very busy person.
Well, I've learnt to delegate and ask people, how do I do this? How do I do that? I had to work out how to do an online course. I had to, so, I asked people, and once again, I was put on to people who could do that for me. Same with writing the second book. I did it through a different way. This time it's self-published. So I got in touch with somebody who I respected who self-published his book and did his coaching program. And I've also got, when I was running the last course, Spirit downloaded that the third book is going to be written by my certified quantum EFT practitioners, and no one has certified yet. However, the certification program is up, and there are several people that half a dozen already or so that have said they want to become certified quantum EFT practitioners. And so in that process, they will be writing up their own stories of their own cases. And I will be asking them and their clients if it's all right for those stories to then go into a book, and that will then be advertising them as quantum EFT certified practitioners. So really it's about not just teaching somebody to fish, but teaching them to be fishermen, not just catching a fish,
Right.
So
right.
It's about me passing on this tool to others, and eventually after the certification program, there'll be those that will say, well, I want to be a trainer, and I'll then run a trainers program so that there'll be other trainers out there to do this. Because this work needs to be out there in the world, and it can't just rely on me. I'm not going to be around forever to do it either. So it's about creating something that can be passed on, and it's still evolving as we go as well. I'm learning from my students. Some of those people are amazingly gifted people, and that's what I love, is that we're getting to all learn from each other. And we're also using a lot of future self or future lives as well, and bringing in more and more of the positive lives as we release the traumatic lives.
I was going to ask you about that, because one of the things that was an eye opener and a bringing together of various thoughts that I'd had was what I learned from Robert Morris in his work about future lives, and that in our connections, quantum physics teaches us that there is no time, actually. Things are simultaneous. And so if they're simultaneous, the same way that we can go back and look at a past life, that's not a linear kind of thing. So when people, When you talk about mining the Akash, how
Hmm.
do future lives play into this?
I've had that with a few people when we've asked guides and higher self to take us to a lifetime where we, whatever we were looking for, where we had abundance and joy, or whatever it was. Sometimes they've gone into the future in this current life.
Ah,
Sometimes they've gone into a future life. And I remember doing a session with an 8.5-year-old boy at the time, and we went looking for what we needed, and um, he said, I'm a jet pilot. And I said, what year is it? And he goes, what did he say? It was 2050 or something, or 2054. He said, I think it's my next life.
oh,
Or,
how
no,
interesting.
21 something. I can't remember what it was, but he goes, I think it's my next life straight away. I mean, here he is, 8.5. He didn't have time to even calculate it. And he just said what it was. And he said, I think it's my next life. And off he went. And he was bringing back all these amazing gifts that he had of focus and concentration, and things that he was struggling with at school. And we
At
brought
eight
them
and a half.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
So, that's what I love, is being able to combine the past life regression hypnotherapy with quantum EFT, which is what I do in Transform Your Life program and in the online courses, where we do, on the online course, we do a small group past life regression with the intention to release traumas and things that are holding us back. And then we do one with the intention of mining the Akash and go to lifetimes where we bring forward gifts and experiences that we've had. And then it's a little bit different to a past life reader, where they tell you what has occurred because they get to experience it. Like in my book, Tapping into Past Lives, when
Mm-hmm.
one of the ladies was she was a German professor, and she was speaking to hundreds of people, and as a and he realized that people wanted to hear what he had to say. And she was a gifted writer, and in this life had never written anything. And now she's written 2 books, and
Wow.
she's going to do the third. And oh my God, I could not put her books down. They are so good. And that was because she finally got the experience of people want to hear what I have to say. So it's actually experiencing these things as if it's a memory, it's part of you. And then we activate it, bring it back and activate it through the meridian system into, basically we overlay it from the multidimensional into the 3-dimensional. I like to
Uh-huh.
explain like it's a jukebox. So just like a jukebox has many records, of all of our past lives, the one that's playing at the moment is the now, the 3-dimensional, this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
However, we can select a record from another experience, another lifetime, and then it will play in the now. And so that's what we're doing, is we're recalibrating ourselves and our DNA to overlay that experience and have it play now. And we have it speak to the blueprint of the stem cells, and we recalibrate all of our DNA so that it is now active again in this life. And I had an amazing experience of that, because this is what Cryon teaches, and I just blindly follow what is taught. And then in Santa Ana, I had somebody come for a private session. And when we released all the trauma around being a hands-on healer, being burnt at the stake or whatever else was occurring, we released all that.
Wow.
Then we brought the gift of hands-on healing into her current biology, and we transferred it and overlaid it, have it speak to the blueprint of the stem cells. And then, when you have one of those machines that hook up to your muscles, and all your muscles start twitching,
Uh-huh.
it was like that. All down her forearms just started spontaneously twitching. All the muscles were going berserk. And
Wow.
that was when we were transferring it all into her hands. And it was like right before my eyes, I'm going, oh my God, this stuff really works.
Would you
Yeah.
would you say a little bit? We've mentioned Mr. Carroll and Cryon. Um,
hmm
would you say a little bit about them? Because I know you're so knowledgeable about them.
Yeah, so Lee Carroll's a engineer, sound engineer by trade, and um, he still he still does that within his channeling, obviously. But he has a left brain puzzle solving mind, and his second wife, who was very spiritual, he used to say he'd go and lock himself into his study while she had her woo woo groups, you know, her meditation, her downfall, so all of this, and he used to
Uh-huh.
just roll his eyes and say, "Oh, she's, you know, off she goes again." But twice he was for his birthday, she gave him a reading with a medium, and they were 3 years apart, and they were recorded on a cassette tape back then. And one of these people said, Cryon is trying to get in touch with you, and spelled out the word Cryon. And he thought, yeah, you know, roll the eyes, crazy person, and didn't think much of it again. But then 3 years later, in a different state, somebody else said the same thing, and his puzzle solving mind could not let go of that. And he sought out the other tape and played it and said, "Oh my God." So, you know, it's like both people had said Cryon and spelt out the word. And so he sat in meditation and said, "Okay, Cryon, if you're trying to connect with me, off you go." And he had this amazing wash of love and tears, and the
Oh,
just started coming through. And it took him about 3 years to actually publish it, to start writing the books. And now he travels the world, um, channeling Cryon wherever he goes. And it's pretty amazing. And he has on cryon.com all the free audios of that.
hmm
I've spent I've been lucky enough to go to many places with the Cryon group and hear channelings live. Mount Shasta, as I said, Hawaii, the Kundalini tour, which was 3 weeks in South America, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Peru. You know, imagine sitting on the side of Machu Picchu having a channeling. It
oh,
was pretty
oh,
cool.
magical.
Um,
You know,
yeah.
I'm struck by this. I'm finding more and more people who started off as complete skeptics, eye rollers, as you said,
Yes. Yes.
who are now doing international stuff. They're well known for their work. They're
Mhm.
powerful at what they do. And I look at that transformation and I just think it is absolutely amazing.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's because they were skeptical that they question everything that comes through. And Lee still does. And he has Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza travel with him often to back up with science what Cryon is channeling.
Oh, no,
And
that's
yeah, and so you know, Lee likes to do the research himself. When Cryon channels something through him, he starts looking up the scientific stuff to see if there's something that is scientifically proving that, and he often comes up with things that that backs up what Cryon is channeling, which is pretty cool.
You know, as I'm listening to you, I'm struck again by how much bigger the universe is
Hmm.
than we think it is. You
Yeah.
know, we grow up in this 3D world, linear, um, the old paradigm of duality thinking, and
Hmm.
the universe is. I mean, I for years have talked about the multiverse, and now I'm seeing that word appearing all over the place
Mm.
because the universe is so much bigger than even a universe. It's a
Mhm.
multiverse. It's
And that's
fascinating.
a good segue into what I'll just quickly speak about is that in my new book, more and more people were going to other planets. So it looks at our planetary Akash, not just our life on this planet, but um, lives on Arcturus and other planets. So I have a chapter on that as well, where people have gone into other planets, and
Mm.
I have the videos for that too. So in the last chapter of my current book, I also have links to all the videos that people have kindly approved of for people to be able to watch. So not only have the transcripts of their session in the book, but also the video of it. And that's how this second book is a lot different, is that there's most of the book is actual transcripts of their sessions. So transcripts of their past life regression, transcripts of their quantum EFT session, as well as the videos, so that you can see word for word what's happening.
This is just so wonderful. I'm in awe. This is a synchronistic thing for me. I'm in awe of how things that, okay, for example, I had never heard of Cryon. And then I started reading your book and did my homework, Googling and so on. Tonight, I was doing a session I do twice a week called Messages of Spirit. And one of the people who was in there starts talking about Cryon. Now, that was just an hour and a half before our time together. And I'm finding that kind of thing happening more and more and more often. And I love that feeling.
Yes, I do too. I just wanted to also mention, talking about Cryon, Marilyn Harper also tends to travel with Cryon a lot these days. She was with Cryon in Egypt when I was there in February, and she invited me last year at Hot Springs, Arkansas, at the Cryon event. She invited me to be one of the keynote speakers, along with herself and Mike Dooley from Notes from the Universe, at the Visionaries in Light Convergence in Denver, Colorado. So I'm running a workshop in Toronto on September 16, 17, and then I'll be in Denver, Colorado from September 22nd to 24th with the Visionaries in Light Convergence. So that's still available for people to book into, and there'll be some amazing speakers there. And that's visionariesinlight.com.
Visionariesinlight.com. Great. Okay, before we close off, if you would again say your website so that people can contact you and can read up and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's quantumeft.com.au, and you can go to the Let's Talk Schedule Now section and talk to me, make a free 15-minute appointment to talk to me. And then the same with tappingintopastlives.tv. You can also make a free 15-minute appointment there. And it's quantumeft.com.au/your past life inheritance. So each word is hyphenated for the bonuses for the book launch.
Wonderful.
On September 2nd.
That is wonderful. I'd like to thank you so much for being here. And I'd like to thank all of you out there in SOC Radio, TuneIn, and other platforms for sharing this time with us. Jenny, this has been just delightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for staying up late, and for Colin for getting up early.
At the 3D world at work. That's wonderful. Okay, well, for those of you who are listening in, if you go to spiritualistsonline.com and then back at / I always call it a backslash, but it's /RAD for radio, SCHED for schedule, .php. You will find there the complete calendar of radio shows for SOC Radio, all sorts of fascinating things, some of which will tie in absolutely beautifully with what Jenny has offered today. So again, thank you, Colin, and thank you, Jenny. This has been a great show with Spirit Weavers and your host, Jody White Wolf Morrison.
You have been listening to Jody White Wolf Morrison, Spirit Weavers on SOC Radio. Brought to you by Spiritualists Online Network and Lyceum at spiritualistsonline.com. Thanks for listening. Spirit Talk with Julie. Spirits medium Julie Simpson and guests